Welcome to Deep Look. It's Ultiworld's weekly radio show / podcast. I can't get it out of my brain, Keith. I'm going to call it a radio show until I'm dead. Keith Rayner, Charlie Eisner joining you on this Tuesday, October 8th. We're just a couple of weeks away from the national championships in San Diego and got a lot to get to today. Keith, how was your weekend?
It was good. I got to travel with Wesleyan for a one-day tournament. So my first tournament experience with the team. It was only a few games. Got a lot of dubs, but that's not what we're focused on. It's preseason. It's fall. We're focused on getting better. So that was our main goal, but a successful weekend at that as well. So,
and yet the first thing you said was that you got a lot of dubs. So
I was preempting what you would want to know. What the outside observer wants to know about dubs, but everybody knows in Ultimate on the inside, it's all about the process, baby.
I just quick note. I did an Ask Me Anything over on Reddit's subreddit r Ultimate last week. I'm actually going to pop back in later today and answer a few more questions and pick out our winners of all access subscriptions for a month. Those folks who left a question in the chat, you still got time. If you want to go in there and ask a question, you could be entered to win one of 3 free all access subs. And that gives you an opportunity to watch all of the national championships coverage in a couple of weeks. And hey, it's also a great time to sign up for one of those. If you don't win, at ultiworld.com/subscribe. So you can go check out some answers. I hadn't done one, Keith, in 7 years, which is hard to believe. But Ultiworld has changed a lot in the last 7 years.
It sure has. I mean, if you went back and told the Charlie who did the first AMA about the things you would be talking about in this one, I don't know if he would have believed you.
That is true. And 7 years ago, we had no employees. And 2018, Keith, you started full time. And then we've added a few more people over time and excited to kind of try to keep building. And so check out the answers over there if you're into it. And of course, you can always ask questions in the Discord as well if you're an Ultiworld subscriber at the standard or all access level. Big news, USA Ultimate announcing their next CEO. After 15 years with Tom Crawford, Kevin Erlenbach. Yeah, sorry, Keith. I know you threw your name in the hat.
This is how I'm learning the news that I didn't get picked.
Kevin Erlenbach, who comes from USA Hockey, the national governing body of hockey in the United States. He was the lead of their membership department, and he's coming over. There's a long press release up on USAU that kind of hits on a bunch of topics that I think people have really been from the community have really been expressing interest in, youth growth, EDI initiatives, general membership growth, working with bigger organizations. And it kind of talks about how Kevin checks a lot of these boxes. Keith, I'm curious for your initial thoughts on the selection here.
This came out of nowhere to me. And I think there's always a question about when USA Ultimate is making leadership decisions. Are they going to look within the Ultimate community or reach outside of that? I think by most people's standards, this would be an outside move. But Kevin is a bit connected with Ultimate, has some Ultimate experience. And so I think that's really what you want to find is that perfect balance of somebody who both has familiarity with Ultimate, who understands the community and the needs of players, but has outside experience and perspective to bring to the table. So hopefully Kevin's able to apply that. And certainly when reading what USA Ultimate had to say about this in their announcement, it's clear that they were looking for someone to focus on those key initiatives that you mentioned, growing youth and adding diversity. And from my experience with hockey, that has been a push, particularly that has happened really recently, and has caused a lot of consternation in the wider hockey community. It's not a community that has often been diverse, and there are a lot of disagreements about what it would mean for the game. So I'm sure it was a challenging decision for him to figure out exactly how to approach that. But it does seem like there's been progress made. You love to see someone who has experience growing in those areas that we want to grow in. So I'm curious to see what he'll bring to the table, because some novel ideas, some outside the box thinking, some stuff different from what Ultimate has done is really valuable when you're bringing in someone with that outside experience.
Just to kind of give a sense of scope here, I mean, USA Hockey is a lot bigger than USA Ultimate.
Yeah.
I just kind of like eyeballing the size of their staff. It's probably 8 to 10 times bigger. I haven't dug into their financial details or anything, but he was the head of the membership team. So his official title was Assistant Executive Director Membership. So he was one step below the CEO level position at USA or at USA Hockey. And he oversaw a team of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 people, which is basically like the size of USA Ultimate. So he's already had a leadership position at a similar scope, within USA Hockey. So this is a very, how do I put this? This is a very USA Ultimate hire. Like the last time they made a hire, Tom Crawford, coming from the USA tennis world, now they're making another hire sort of within that bubble of national governing bodies. They did not pick somebody with Ultimate background. They picked somebody with leadership background in another sports org. And it's really interesting to see the contrast between what USA Ultimate has been doing and what the PDGA has been doing on the disc golf side, where they have continued to hire within the sport, basically, and have people who are like dyed in the wool disc golfers. They recently switched CEOs over there, and Doug Bjerkes, their new CEO, I mean, he's like a disc golf legend. He's worked in the industry for years and years, and he certainly had leadership experience, but he is a disc golfer through and through. I'm not necessarily sure that one is right or wrong, Keith, but I think they come with pros and cons. I am a little concerned that this feels like a very continuity decision from the board of directors, who, by the way, voted unanimously to select Kevin, as opposed to looking for somebody from the Ultimate universe. I'm curious if you have thoughts on that distinction.
It is an important distinction. It's definitely something that is important to consider, especially with a potential change in direction that we expect USA Ultimate to be making over these next few years as they really start to enact the new strategic plan. And it felt like at the time when US Ultimate was pushing for the Olympics and more traditional sports legitimacy, that Tom Crawford was somebody who could bring those aspects to USA Ultimate. And obviously, this is a bit of a different direction. This is not, obviously, hockey is, as like you mentioned, a big following. It was a well-known broadcast sport, all those sorts of things. But that's not where Erlenbach's experience is coming from. It's coming from developing youth programming and other areas of really adding folks to their hockey world, which is what we want to see happening in USA Ultimate. So in that respect, I think that's good. And I think that Ultimate in general has a kind of tendency towards insular, sticking with what we've done, pulling up people who've already come within the community. I think that happens a lot as is. And so I think that this is actually an area where I think it's good to see the leadership at the top of this community reaching outside and saying, hey, let's bring in somebody with a different perspective, with different types of experience, who can come in, who has some understanding of Ultimate, but we have a lot of that sense of community within this group already. The board of directors is already steeped in Ultimate culture, in community, in connection. And so I think that this is something where having that additional person has a lot of value to me. So I'm thinking, on the whole, I'm glad for it. But I understand how it could create concerns, particularly with some of the issues we think that are standing right in front of USA Ultimate at the moment. Particularly to me, the relationships between USAU and the local disc orgs, particularly as it pertains to youth programming, which I think we all think is a problem that USAU is trying to solve. But they've also brought in new folks to help with that too. So I don't necessarily think that this disrupts that. So I'm curious. Like, I'll be curious to see what Erlenbach's, like, really what his familiarity with Ultimate looks like, to get a better sense of how much of a part of the Ultimate community he's been in the past. But I do expect him to really be bringing his experience from USA Hockey to Barry much more than his Ultimate experience.
Yeah, I mean, this is very, very interesting. I mean, he seems like an excellent fit for a lot of reasons. Let's take a look at the membership numbers at USA Hockey since Erlenbach took over as the head of the membership department back in 2012. So you can see, I put the percent change numbers down there at the bottom from 2012 to 2024. These are not huge numbers. Obviously the growth among female players is really good at 42%. Overall growth has been pretty slow and steady, one-ish, maybe 2% a year. The big challenge, of course, is that COVID took a big bite out of everything. I mean, you can see the drop there in 2020, 2021, and they're still not quite back to their all-time high in total membership of player membership of 567,000. But again, like these numbers are the scale is so much bigger here. I think an interesting part of Kevin's background is that he used to do, he was the director of marketing for a while in a previous career before. He's been at USA Hockey for 18 years. So he has marketing background. He has a sports background. He has membership background. These things all make a lot of sense for like what Ultimate needs. And he obviously understands growing at with a much higher base of players, right? You're not going to get the same kind of impressive percentage numbers of growth. But, if Ultimate added 5,000 members in a year, that would be a big, big percentage growth because our base is so much smaller. So I think, Ultimate has the opportunity to grow fast because of the nature of the sport, changing culture around like youth sports, and just the fact that like we are coming from a small base. So, pretty good youth numbers in the context of overall team sports on the decline across the board. When you look at, youth participation, among high schoolers, for instance, we've seen that sort of a secular downtrend there. So to see these numbers going up for hockey, and it is at all-time highs for youth membership numbers, that's a really good sign.
And hockey is an expensive sport to play. I think it's predominantly white. It's predominantly upper middle class because of the costs associated with playing it. And obviously, it's a bit regional in nature because of it being played on ice and the conditions that allow for that. But I do think that those other two characteristics are things that we think are already true about Ultimate. And so I think that there's some experience with understanding the type of group that has established the sport and has dominated the sport and how to bring it outside of that group and make it accessible to other people. And I think that experience in particular could be really useful for Ultimate in those parallels between our sport and hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably are dealing with similar kinds of things to think about, obviously on a bigger scale, but having a sort of like a more homogenous base of players, I think we're dealing with the same thing. I think hockey has a harder time, perhaps, of breaking out of that mold than Ultimate does, which is much younger as a sport and has been emphasizing this a lot, especially at the local level, about becoming more diverse. So it's very interesting. I'll just read a quick quote from Erlenbach in the press release. He said, "The opportunity to join this amazing community is the thrill of a lifetime. Ultimate's core values, spirit of the game, and culture providing a sporting community that makes sure there is space for every person was something that matched my personal ethos. I'm a strong believer that sport is culture's greatest classroom and unifying force. The high character and passion of the people I've already met and I'm learning about with the board, staff, stakeholders, and membership made me want to become an influential part of this rapidly evolving community. The opportunity to be a part of the USA Ultimate team is an honor for my family and me. There have been so many milestones for USA Ultimate, and I'm excited for us to collectively continue its expansion." So there you go. He's got a degree in sport enterprise and marketing. He already lives in Colorado Springs, so that's an easy fit. And again, a unanimous decision from the board to pick him as the CEO. So take a look at the press release. We certainly look forward to having Kevin on. I asked USA Ultimate about getting him on today, but they said that he needed to wait until he was done at USA Hockey before doing an interview. So stay tuned for when that will happen, probably sometime after the national championships. Any other thoughts on it, Keith?
I imagine you will be at with USA Hockey, but maybe we'll get to some FaceTime. Maybe we'll actually see him at the club championships. Be curious.
That's a great point. He's probably going to be there. I bet you'll be there. So give us a like, give us a subscribe wherever you are listening to this pod. If you're listening to it live on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by Club Nationals. We might actually make it. So if you're not already subscribed, this is the chance. It costs you nothing. Just click the button and click the thumbs up. We appreciate it. It's time for our trivia question of the week.
This week's trivia question of the week, we're going to play a little guess the player. I don't know. Maybe we should play a little guess the host. Guess which Deep Look host used to work for an NHL team. It's your boy right here. I know a little thing about something about hockey, just a little tiny bit. But you're here for guess the player. We know. So this week's player, I'm going to give you 3 hints. Charlie will and Chad and all the listeners can take a chance at guessing. And when we come back from a break, we'll share the answers. Maybe give you a couple more hints if we need those. So our hints for this player. This player has won a club championship in the past, let's say 5 seasons. Past 5 seasons. Okay. Players won a club championship. They're a player of Philly origin, and they are a 2-time all-club selection. Those are your first 3 hints for this week's Guess the Player. So start formulating what you've got. Charlie, are you getting some vibes? Or you got some potential ideas here?
I got some ideas. There's definitely a lot of players who I feel like could fit the bill here, but I'll think about it.
Yeah, so far I think we net, but we'll see what you get too.
Okay. Am I guessing? I feel like we have a little something to talk about with the Kaimana Classic.
Yeah, why don't you take some time to think about your guesses? We'll let the chat get some guesses in, and we'll tell you a little bit about Kaimana Classic, which is coming up very, very soon. It's now through October 18th. You can go ahead and submit your team's bid to join one of the most storied tournaments in Ultimate history, the Kaimana Classic. It returns for its 36th year. It's over President's Day weekend from February 15th through 17th in the heart of Honolulu. And that's just steps from Waikiki Beach. The tournament includes 3 days of games, sponsored parties, 6 meals, swag, and little extras throughout the weekend. They make sure that every player feels the Aloha spirit. Go to hawaiiultimate.com/Kaimana Classic for more information on how to submit your bid. That's hawaiiultimate.com/Kaimana, KAIMANA -classic with 2 Ks. 2 Ks in classic. One at the end, one at the beginning. The tournament is accepting bids for open and women's division teams through October 18th, so get them in now. Mahalo nui loa, and see you there.
Keith, I got to get to Kaimana at some point.
Yeah. I think we're both. Can we? Let's just go ahead and book. Let's get this taken care of right now, because I've been to Hawaii once, and it's like one of the most amazing places on earth. So I would love to play some multiplayer.
I've only been one time. It's far from New York and Connecticut. It's very far. It's a lot easier to go to the Caribbean, but it's also spectacularly beautiful. I went to Maui. It was great. And I've just heard wonderful things about this tournament. But not this year, not 2025 for me, but I have it on my bucket list.
There we go.
All right. My guess is Raha Mozafari.
Okay, Raha Mazafari is not the pick. So far, our hints, we have someone who's a 2-time all-club selection, won a club championship in the past 5 years, and is of Philly origins. I see a Raha in the chat. There's a couple other guesses. You want your next hint? You ready?
Yeah, because I feel like it could have been multiple people. So
yeah, I think there was a bit of a wide net. This player has gone to nationals with 2 club teams, both in the open division. Or men's division, I guess I should say.
2. Okay. Won a title in the last 5
years. 2 different teams.
I would say Trent Dillon.
Well, like Akshat in the chat, you are correct. It is Trent Dillon. Uh, so you did knock it
Let's
out.
go.
I don't think this was the toughest one we've ever had. So, but I think we didn't have to get down to next gen All Star or Callahan winner to get you there.
I feel like it narrowed it down because I was thinking maybe Michael Ing, but
Mm,
he played with Amp. I don't know if he's. You would have said that it had been in a mixed division, so that ruled it out for me. That's why I went with Trent.
okay, there you go. I considered doing an anagram of Trent Dillon's name for this, but it was harder to come up with one that wasn't really obvious who it was. So, uh, well, you got there. I'm proud of
And
you.
Trillin. All right. It's time to talk about the U-24 tryout list. USA Ultimate announced the 212 players invited to try out for the under 24 USA national team in September. So it says in September in this article, which I just read without thinking about it, but that doesn't make sense. That could not be the time that they're going to do the tryout. I don't know when is the tryout? Did they announce that? It's not going to be in September.
They're very soon. I think. I do not think we have a lot. I think it's like a month.
Okay. Let's call it within the next couple months. The tournament is next summer in Logroño, Spain, and almost 600 players expressed interest, and so about a third of them got selected to get a tryout. Now, we're not going to try to go through every single name on this list. Keith, what did you notice initially about taking a look through who did get a tryout and maybe who didn't get a tryout?
I don't know if this says more about me or about the list, but Charlie, I think.
Oh, Keith is frozen. We've lost Keith, at least for the moment, and we'll see if we get him back. We got you back, Keith. We lost you for a second there, bud.
Okay, which is ironic because I literally was saying I think I'm pretty plugged in. So obviously, for a moment there, was not plugged in. I feel like I'm pretty plugged in with College Ultimate, right? I know if there's one thing I know, it's a lot of College Ultimate teams and players, right? I am stunned by how many players on this list I am not super familiar with. There are some who aren't like really obvious. There are some who's like players I basically don't even know their names, and that does not happen very often. Uh, it's an impressively wide list. You got 212 players. We got a lot of D3 representation. We have some players from last year's U20 cycle. You really got players from all over the country. It's a big list, but I was really surprised by how far reaching it is. I mean, this is not just like, oh, let's go look at the best kids from UNC and Seattle and Colorado. There's plenty of Carleton kids on there or whatnot, but it's a pretty diverse cast, I think.
Definitely is. And I'm right there with you. I mean, in some ways it makes sense, I guess. I mean, we still follow the college division extremely closely, both of us, Keith. So I think we know some of the players that we expect to see on this list. We expect to make the team. And as we get a little closer to the tryouts, we'll certainly be talking about the players that we think are locks and that we think have a good chance. But I mean, I think there's almost guaranteed to be some surprises for us just because of how many names are on here that have not made a name for themselves in the college division yet. Whether that's because they're on a team that doesn't sort of like get a lot of national press, or they're a younger player on the team. I think we're still going to be able to pick at least 50% of these rosters, because I think that there are players who are almost a lock to get spots because they've been playing at a very high level for multiple seasons. We know what they can do. There's a lot of tape on them. Coaches are going to know that. But I think there's going to be some players who make the team that we don't know, and maybe we'll make a splash this year. There's been quite a bit of talk about who didn't make the tryout list. One notable name, Axel Olsen, who has been one of the top high school prospects for a long time, was on the U20 team, leading the way as a thrower for their offense. Maybe the most talented throwing prospect on the boys' side in, I don't even know, like many seasons, maybe since JR. And he didn't get a tryout, despite applying. I'm pretty surprised by that. What do you think about that, Keith?
Since JR, I mean, I think I went out and said that he's like the most advanced thrower in high school boys competition that I think I've ever seen. Uh, he's so technical as a thrower. And I thought acquitted himself pretty nicely with the U20 team. Headed to Carleton in this coming season, and saw they just dropped their roster, and it is filled with players from this list. So it'll be interesting to see what the future of Cut looks like. But the future of under 24 as of now, don't expect Axel to be there. We have seen them make changes after this initial list, but I don't think that's some oversight or anything. And I agree with you that I think we'll have some locks. We'll have some people that we feel pretty comfortable are going to make the team. Chloe Akimi was on last year's U24 team. So was Erica Birdsong. I think they're probably going to be in pretty good position. Rutledge Smith, I think we're feel pretty good that he's going to make the team. I think though, after we get past the locks into your, likelies, your maybes, I think that's going to get really muddy really fast. So I think it's going to be a tough job picking this year. And the coaches are going to have a tough job. 72 slots though.
Will the Grossbusters make the team?
I think they've got a pretty good shot. I mean, Sam Grossberg looked absolutely electric at HSNI, and I think Adam's pretty proven too.
Any other like snubs that, of course, the thing about snubs is you never know who actually applied. They don't release that information. So like some of this stuff, we kind of get some info coming out of the Discord or around. Any other obvious snubs that seem surprising?
No, yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see what other names we hear about of folks who might have applied who didn't get in. But no, there's no one who it's like really obvious is missing. And in some cases, sometimes those players didn't apply when you're like, oh, where's this X, Y, and Z star player? And they didn't apply. So it's possible they didn't apply. I also think I was hearing some talk that some of the players who I think are big name players who can make this team are not going to be able to go to tryouts or abroad for this time period. So I'll be curious to see what happens with them. I think maybe I heard that about Jolie Krebs. So like, is Jolie Krebs going to be able to attend tryouts? And if she doesn't, like,
if she wants to play on the team,
Jolie Krebs?
If she wants to play on the team, she doesn't need to try out. Like,
if you weren't going to take her because she's abroad, why even put her on the tryout list? Like,
right. No, I mean, I think you obviously take Jolie Krebs even if she can't try out. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, she's dominating at the highest levels of the sport. She could be the best player on the team. So Emp says in the chat, can't wait for Cut to bomb out of the bracket with a stacked team for the umpteenth year in a row. I'm telling you right now.
Are out.
No, I'm not. I am a known Cut hater at times, but this is not one of those years. I think this team's going to be very good this year. Am I ready to pick them to semis? Possibly. Possibly. They're going to be really good, Keith. I think people maybe underestimate how good their freshman class is. I mean, it's very good. Very, very good. Like this, they could win a title in a couple seasons.
Hey, while we're hyping up schools that have under 7,500 people going to them, shout out Wesley, and they see what's up. Milo and Nat are both on the U24 tryout list, so good luck to them.
It is also known that if you're unable to make tryouts, that you can send in like videotape of your essentially a hype reel of yourself. And for certain players, that's going to be enough to get you in. Like everyone the coaching staff understands what Jolie Krebs is able to do. So, all right. Any other notes on the U24 stuff, Keith? I'm looking forward to making our locked list.
That's the most fun part is making the picks, right? I don't know if we're going to get an ESPN documentary this time, but I still will have fun making the picks with you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking and we're revealing the top 10 club players in the division as voted by our staff, players, and subscribers. It's the reveal coming up, and we'll talk about it right after this.
Antoine Davis. You take the field with basically two things: yourself and your cleats. That's why you need the best on your feet. For me, I want grip to handle my change of direction and stick with my person on defense. I want my cleat to be light to help me play long points and accelerate to get to my top speed. That's why I love my toe K cleats. They're specifically designed for Ultimate, with a cleat pattern for the game's sharp cuts and a durable, breathable, supportive build to keep your feet and ankles protected and comfortable for longer. That's why I've been using them for 3 years. They're my best ally on the field. You put your best self on the field, so make sure you're bringing the best with you at tokay-ultimate.com. That's TOKAY-ultimate.com. Tokay, sky the limits.
Whether you're gearing up for a TCT event or Summer League, YCC competition or Masters, Breakmark can help your team get kitted out. Their bundles get you everything your team needs, and each one comes with a free reversible and 5-panel hat. Whatever your game, Breakmark.com is the place to get your team ready this season.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Well, every year we do our top 25 club players in the division. Our lists are made. They are finalized. The full lists are going to drop, including additional content for subscribers, and they'll be able to see the full lists in the next 24 hours. But we are getting the Deep Look exclusive right now. Top 10 players in each division. We're dropping them right here on the pod, and we're going to talk about them. Let's begin in the men's division. Let's go ahead and throw it up on the screen for anybody who's watching with us on YouTube. The top 10 players in the men's division in 2024. Again, these are decided by Ultiworld staff, players in the division, and subscribers. Keith, what's the weighting on the votes for that, so everybody's aware?
A staff vote is worth 10 points. A participant vote is worth 6 points, and a subscriber vote is worth 3 points.
All right, there you go. So here is the top 10. Number 10, John Randolph. Number 9, Henry Ing. Number 8, Alex Atkins. Number 7, Quinn Feiner. Number 6, Chris Kocher. Number 5, Johnny Malks. Number 4, Rafi Hayes. Number 3, Jeff Babbitt. Number 2, Christian Boxley. And number 1, Joe White. 10 fantastic players. Everybody's going to have their quibbles here and there, but I don't think there's anybody on this list of players that you think, well, no way they should be in the top 10. I'm a big fan of Joe White landing at number 1. How popular a number 1 pick was he, Keith?
Joe White was actually, I was a bit surprised by this from our staff, all but 2 votes going his way for number 1. There also was a vote for Babbitt and a vote for Rafi. He was also number 1 in the participants, but he was number 5 with the subscribers. So, but altogether, like I think you can make a cogent case for probably 4 or 5 different players for number 1. So I was a bit surprised that there was so much consensus around Joe White, who feels like a pretty safe option. I think this has been directionally kind of where he's going. So I'm not that surprised by that on its face that he's number 1, but I didn't expect it to be so clean. He was number 3 last year behind Jack Williams and Christian Boxley. But I think there's a good case for a couple different players.
Was he the unanimous number 1 among participants? Probably not.
He was not. He was three of the 4 participant ballots. Joe White first.
Who was the 4th?
Babbitt.
Who was the other number 1? Babbitt. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think particularly those top 3, I would not really have qualms seeing any of them at number 1 on someone's list. Babbitt has been unbelievable. We know how great Boxley is and how much he means to that truck offense. Yeah, I just think like the combination of skills that Joe White provides and like the ability to play basically anywhere on the field sets him apart, and he's number 1 on my ballot.
And Charlie didn't have a ballot, so this is my chance to actually get the reveal for me personally of what Charlie thinks about it. I think I feel like Joe, the knock on him was never the things he can do. His best was as good as anybody's, and he could be good at basically any given skill on the field. It was more people knocked him for the turnovers, for the decision making, for the consistency on defense. I think he smoothed out a lot of those rough edges. I think the turnovers that he does take are the kind of rule breaker turnovers you allow for in a lot of cases. I think he's become a much sharper defender. He's really rounded out his game in a way that I think makes his case for a number one really solid. And I think I was probably, a few years ago, I was lower on Joe White than the average person. I think I was lower than our staff, but I've really come around, and he's a pretty undeniable force.
It's interesting seeing kind of the club team breakdown here, right? So we got one guy from Machine, two from Truck, two from Pony, one from Dig, one from Portland, two from Bravo, I think I got, and one from Revolver. So, I feel like you think about, right, mostly those are the best teams. But then the one that really stands out for me again is Pony, who, when I was just looking this up for another project we were working on, has 9 national team players on their roster. They have, I think it's 7 guys, or maybe it's even more than that, who are on the USA
we got to
national
11.
team.
I think we counted 11 total.
9 USA national team players, Liam Haberfield, who played for Team New Zealand Open, and Conrad Schloer, who played for Team Germany Open. I'm like, how is this team not the best team? And not only are they not the best team, they're not even close to the best team. I don't understand how they're not putting it together, Keith.
Well,
they got 2 guys in the top 10.
This is the Pony paradox, right? I mean, last year they had the guy who was number 1 in addition to most of those guys.
Right.
So, this is it. It's interesting to me because the results as a team, as a collective, haven't been there necessarily to back that up. But when you look at each player individually, who are you saying is overrated? Who are we arguing against? Ben Yacht was like a top 10 guy for the past 2 years, and he's not in this top 10. When you think about the other guys who've been top players on Pony, they're big names and players who I don't think you would argue with their spot in the top 25. And I think maybe it goes to show you both how difficult it is to be successful in elite men's competition, but also that the exercise of getting great players together is no longer good enough to make a great team, to make a successful team. Obviously, it's an important step towards doing that, but it is not the end of the process.
Yeah, it's true. We will see what happens at nationals. By the way, sorry, wrong ink. 2 Rhino guys, 1 0 Revolver guys. Although I think Michael Ing could be on this list too.
Well, if folks can check out our full top 25 when it drops and find out how many Revolver players made the list, because there are some other guys who could be in that mix for sure.
Do you have any major quibbles here, Keith?
No, this is pretty in line with my own personal rankings. There are a couple guys who at the back end who made it, who I didn't have Johnny Malks as high as everybody else did. I actually had him at 11 overall. And I had Nate Goff in my top 10. So that's probably one of the few places I get the appeal of Malks. His rise has been tremendous. And I think he's getting a lot of credit, rightfully so, for the success of Truck Stop's offense. But I'm not quite there in line with everybody else. So that's maybe the only place that I might quibble.
Interesting. I have Johnny as an easy top 5 guy right now. If I had to quibble here with this list, I'm not sure JR makes my top 10. I mean, he's still like easily in my top 20, but that's probably where I would maybe have a little bit of a complaint, but these mostly make sense to me. Let's move on. Let's go to the women's division. Your top 10 on that side. Number 10, Dina Elamelek. Number 9, Kayla Helton. Number 8, Britt Dos Santos. Number 7, Gina Cartagena. Number 6, Anna Thompson. Number 5, Cami Groom. Number 4, Levka Walchak. Number 3, Claire Trope. Number 2, Manuela Cardenas. And number 1, Valeria Cardenas. Very interesting. Lots of international representation. Keith, Vale and Manu go 1-2. How about that?
I'm curious exactly what's changed everybody's mind. I mean, last year we had the same top three, but in a totally different order. Last year we had Trope 1, Valeria 2, and Manuela 3. And those three like clearly had separated from the rest of the group. And that's mostly true this year as well. But what shifted the order for people? Really, Manuela and Valeria essentially tied in our rankings. So you know they you really could split hairs about who's actually 1 and 2. Manuela had more number 1 votes, so she had 3 to Valeria's 1. I was the only person on our staff to vote Valeria 1, but Valeria finished at the top of the subscriber rankings and above Manuela, who finished third in the participant rankings. So fewer participant and subscriber ballots in this division. There was just 1-1. So this group a little bit smaller, but that top 3 clearly has established themselves as the front running 3. And I guess it's kind of just a flavor of the day to decide which one you think is really the number 1. I mean, do you have a clear order for those 3 players?
Vale, Trope, Manu is my 2024 answer. I can't remember who I had at the top of my ballot last year. I think I probably had Trope, but I might have had Vale number 1. I've been
you had Trope, Vale, and Manu last year.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what I would have expected. I just think Vale has leveled up her game. I thought Claire was very good at Worlds, but not as good as Vale was at Worlds. And you know, Worlds right now feels like the highest caliber of competition that we've had so far this club season. So that's kind of what I'm basing things on. I think that those 3 have clearly separated. I mean, even from Levka, who's extremely good. But those 3 are in a league of their own. I'm surprised by how many people pick Manu over Vale. I feel like Valeria's defense has risen to the point where it's on a par with Manu. And I think she's clearly the superior offensive player. The throwing skill set is just, it's hard to replicate that in Ultimate with really anybody else on this list.
I agree with you. I mean, I think they're roughly equal defenders at this point, and I think it's obvious that Manu is a superior cutter and Blair is a superior handler. I think that's pretty established. Although they're both good at both of those things. Don't get me wrong. And I value that throwing skill set more highly. I think Blair's also a little more consistent than Manu, but barely. And I think Manu's a little bit more explosive of an athlete. So like even there, it's mostly a tie. So again, I think you're splitting hairs, but I still have Valeria higher. And I think that's because of the value of her throwing skill set. I mean, at some point we're going to have to start talking about like, is she like hitting Alex Snyder level thrower? Like, are we starting to talk about one of the best throwers to ever touch a disc?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. This is obviously a fantastic list of players. Flor Kularts would have been in my top 10. That's the obvious missing name for me. Probably displacing Dina or maybe Kayla at the back end of this. I'm pretty happy with the players in the top 8. But I think people don't know. I think maybe people will learn at Nationals how good Flor Kularts is.
Yeah, Floor's awesome. I will give you a little bit extra. Floor makes the top 25 here. I wouldn't have had her in my top 10, although I'm open to being proven wrong at Nationals. But you know, I had the only player different from this top 10 to my top 10 is that I had Angela Zhu at 10 and Dina Elmelik at 11. So like very, very marginal difference between the two. And other places that I flipped players, you know, I had Cami over Levka, and I had DeSantos and Thompson held that 6 through 9. I had that rearranged. But I think this was a pretty straightforward, like kind of top group, clear tier 1, and then kind of a clear tier 2 as well. And it's interesting to see how much of this list are players from other countries, although that's really obviously powered by Colombia. There really is not another non-US contingent in any division that is as strong as this Colombian women's division group. who has such a great history, and World's obviously playing a big influence here. But then you add in Levka and Britta Santos, and you have Flor Kalertz you mentioned. So there's definitely a stronger international contingent in the women's division than any of the other ones.
Yeah, it's cool to see how much, that it's starting to feel like USAU Club Nationals is like almost, it's always been the hardest tournament to win, but it's starting to feel even more prestigious, if it doesn't already, than winning a world championship. Like the quality of player at this level is like, the average team is better than the average team at Worlds. So it's going to be a great Club Nationals, the women's division. I can't wait. Let's go to mixed. Let's take a look at our mixed top 10. Rounding out the top end of this top 25. Number 10, Travis Dunn. Number 9, Lindsay McKenna. Number 8, Sadie Jezierski. Number 7, Caleb Denacor. Number 6, Nathan Champeau, aka Skunk. Number 5, Robin Fennig. Number 4, Jade McLaughlin. Number 3, Connor Belfield. Number 2, Khalif El Salam. And number 1, Sarah Mextroth. So there is your list. Keith, any notes on the picks and the votes here in this division?
Well, historically, the mixed division, like its teams, has been the toughest one to pin down, has the most diversity of opinion when we get down to the actual balloting. I think that's in part because of the way that the teams have mixed results as well. So it's not always clear who the best teams are, and that, of course, makes it even harder to judge what the best players where they're playing. So I think that the mixed division often has some of the strangest results and the least clarity around who those best players are. That said, I think it was clear from the voting that there was like a clear top 4 with Mextroth, El Salam, Belfield, and McLaughlin. Those pretty much populated every staff member's top 4 with a couple of dots of exception, but pretty spread out. Khalif with 3 first place votes, Mex with 1 first place vote, but Mex higher in the participant rankings and as well in the subscriber rankings. So the like less consensus here, but I do think a clear top 4 from what the voters were deciding.
Really quick side note. I saw Jade McLaughlin and much of shame at the Albuquerque International Hot Air Balloon Fiesta over the weekend. I was on a short vacation, and I first saw Joe Smash, and then I realized it was like most of Shame, who was taking like a little team trip to the Balloon Fiesta, the world's largest hot air balloon festival, by the way. And so just completely randomly ran into them. Very cool.
Yeah, it's nice to see some players in the wild, I guess, especially, I mean, the Air Balloon Festival is truly a wild event to see people at. Jade has been on such a come up. It's super exciting. I mean, she's had a tremendous past 18 months with world championships and player of the year last year, club championship. So she can just add this to the veritable trophy case. It's interesting to me to see some of the movement that happens in the mixed division. A lot of these names are pretty well established, particularly, but Belfield was like at the back of the top 10 last year, and 2 years ago, I don't even know if he was ranked at all. Sadie Jezierski, she was in the mixed division last year, and she was not in the top 25. But with the way she's been playing and what she was doing at Worlds, I think impressed a lot of people, really opened their eyes to what she could do.
It's a good thing that the coaching staff, hit the break glass in case of emergency box for Sadie Jezierski, who basically got no PT in the final until the end of the game, and then she like helped them win the game. I feel like Sadie is like, what is it about her game that causes coaches of national teams to like just be like, oh no, we can't put Sadie in. We can't put Sadie in the tryout. We can't pick Sadie for the team, even though all she does is prove that she's really good time and time again. I think she's a very deserving of a top 10 spot here.
I get that. I mean, I think it's the risk taking, right? Sadie Jezierski takes a lot of risks with the disc defensively.
I get it.
Just a player who gambles, but when you know how it is with gambling. Gambling's very popular right now. She's a parlay hit, right? When she wins, she wins big. I had her just outside of my top 10. I had her at 13, but I don't really have a huge problem with this positioning of 8.
My Uber driver in Albuquerque showed me his like 12 team NFL money line parlay ticket. I was like, "Do you ever win these?" He's like, "No." He's like, "But I will one day." I'm like, "That's why the casinos are winning."
I just saw something about how much of the money that FanDuel and DraftKings makes is from parlays. It's outrageous. Don't be a sucker.
I'm sure it is. Who do I feel like do I have complaints about this top 10? It's pretty damn good. You know, I got one for you who I know I would have in my top 10. Lucas Ambrose. This dude is absolutely on fire right now. I think we might come away from nationals and people are going to be like, "Ooh, yeah, we definitely should have had him in our top 10." He is really, really good.
I had him at 11, and I think there's like a chance he could win Player of the Year. I think that's not impossible. I mean, he could end
It's
up
not
being the best
impossible.
player on the best team. So I don't see why that couldn't happen. He's tremendous defensively, and I think his athleticism plays really well offensively in the mixed division. Joey Wiley, a player that I had higher up, I had him at 7, but I think people are not used to him being in the mixed division. They're not used to this disco club team. Maybe people aren't really believers. But he was my disco club representative. And Mika Kurahashi is another player I had in my top 10 who didn't make it. I'm a huge fan. Awesome in the air, really dominant, but also really sound with the disc. Isn't someone who's going to go out there and like absolutely dice you up with her throws necessarily, but was doing more of that this past college season. So I do imagine that that's a part of her game that's expanding. So she's someone I have my top 10 at number 8 who didn't end up making it in the top 10 at all.
Before we get to our mailbag question of the week, I wanted to quickly chat about the Nationals player fees. There's been a little bit of conversation on social media about this. It's $225 a player in 2024, which, that's a lot, right? That's a lot more than people pay for most tournaments by quite a distance. Some context, 2 years ago, it was $150 a player. Last year was 165, and so a big jump up, $60 more to 225. Largely, I can just tell you this: this is being driven by the fact that the fields in San Diego are really expensive, and the price keeps going up on that. So they got to pay for those fields, and playing in San Diego is expensive. But Keith, it must be asked: is it too much money? Is this too expensive for what you get at Club Nationals as a player?
No, Charlie. No, it's not. I mean, the market rate is set by the fields, right? As I think I might have said this when in my experience with working with our local Discord here in Connecticut, but the increase in field costs drove basically all of our cost increase around leagues, and I think it was a bit frustrating for some of the membership. Usually, like, look, this is what they charge for fields. I feel like field costs are going up every year. Maybe this is a national phenomenon. Maybe it's happening in San Diego as well, and just happens to be on the coast. I don't know what's going on, but it is like an unavoidable cost. There's no way around it. You really have almost no negotiating power in these arrangements because the fields are in such high demand. So you're kind of at the whim of whatever the costs of the fields are. And I imagine if you laid out for players, look, you could pay the $165 you played last year, but here's where you have to play. I think most players would probably end up taking the alternative of taking the field site that we have. It's worked out pretty well. Aside from the traffic jam to get in and out, which is kind of unavoidable, I think most people have been pretty happy with this field site that we've been at. It is expensive, frustrating for it to go up a lot at once. I understand that. I think being able to manage the cost and then all of a sudden unexpectedly hit people with this extra fee, I'm sure is frustrating. I totally empathize with that. That I think is the challenge is when you have a big increase, because that surprises people. It gives them sticker shock. But I think the overall value proposition is probably still there.
I am not sympathetic. It's $60 extra. What are we talking about here? Okay. You want to play in Rockford again and pay $100 less for your player fee? Because we could do that. You want to do that? Or you just want to complain on the internet?
How are the fish tacos in Rockford, Charlie?
I'm not ordering that. I'm not going to find out, Keith. Listen, like, I bet this, right? despite the increase in fees, because airfares have come down since 2022, and they've very clearly come down, the total cost of going to nationals has probably gone down for most players. Like this is an insignificant amount of money relative to what you are paying to travel to this event. I'm a broken record on this topic, but I cannot stand seeing people complain about this. I can't stand it. Like, yes, it's expensive to go to a 4-day tournament that has observers and, a massive field complex and a player dinner and, all of these amenities and food trucks and all these things and the entire USAU staff working on this for months. Like, how much did it cost? Like $225. That's less than it costs to run a marathon in most places. Like a marathon where they just set out water cups for you. Like, I'm not trying to downplay scheduling a marathon. It's also difficult. I accept that these fees should exist. And as I often say, we need to have higher fees in general, not lower fees. And people need to recognize that they are being irrational about this particular topic when it comes to the total cost of participating in the sport of ultimate. They are being irrational. So that's my final thoughts on it.
I think that there's been a clear sentiment from the wider ultimate community that they do not want to subsidize elite ultimate with their fees. And I think even elite ultimate players like mostly have nothing to say about that or are in support of that until it comes time for the check. And they're like, well, maybe it'd be nice if we subsidized a little bit of this cost so that I could.
No, we should not. We do not need the membership to subsidize this tournament.
No, we do not.
Like
we don't. But this is what that looks like
for it.
This is what that looks like is higher costs for the elite teams involved. Yes. I don't know when teams found out about this. I think it would be great if they knew this at the beginning of the season. I doubt this is a surprise to USA Ultimate. Like they could have probably projected out what the cost is going to be and they could relay that to teams earlier in the season. I think Charlie, you brought up a great point too. What we need is a community-wide like Price is Right exercise. How much do you think it costs to run this tournament per player? And then we can have people fill it out, and then we can put it next to a marathon and a USA hockey tournament and whatever, right? We can once people actually see what they think it costs and what it actually is, I think they might be like, "Oh, never mind. I withdraw my complaint. Call retract."
I don't know the specific details, but I'm guessing that USA Ultimate makes a small amount of money on this tournament. They're not like this is not like a massive money raising tournament for them. They make the bulk of their money from membership fees. This is something that they do, and they try to keep it as reasonable as possible. But they've also been listening to the players who are telling them, we want to be in San Diego, even if it comes at a higher cost. So I think that, mostly players are happy to pay this money. But I do see people complain about it. And it's just like the nonstop drum of people complaining about tournament fees and this and that. I'm like, listen, we should all just agree we're going to pay a little more and we're going to get better tournaments out of it. We're going to have better fields. We're going to have better amenities. We're going to have, better like lined fields, all these things. Let's just agree. Let's pay more. It's not that hard. And people need to make money to run these tournaments.
When you get to the tournament and the entire USAU staff is leaving the parking lot in the Murcielagos, maybe you'll have a different tune.
That's right.
Charlie. Hey, if that's what it takes to get that grilled cheese truck at the fields again, that like $12 grilled cheese or whatever, worth every penny.
We'll see if it's back this year.
It's so good.
All right, time for the mailbag question of the week. What do we got?
All right, this week's mailbag question of the week is a bit of a hypothetical, Charlie. If you look at the teams at the club championships, across all the teams at the club championships, which would be the most attractive coaching job to you? Consider the local competition, your travel schedule and costs, what the roster looks like, maybe what the legacy and prestige of the team is, your recruiting pipelines. What do you think is the most attractive coaching job in all of Elite Club Ultimate?
Wow. That's a really interesting one. Trying to think of like place. I mean, it's a very personal question in some ways, right?
A little bit.
Because it depends like where do you want to live? And that seems like a big portion of this. At least it would for me. Like, I think you could have fun coaching any level of team. Even if you're coaching a team that has no chance to win a national championship, it might be a lot of fun to coach, Montana Moondog. And sorry, Moondog, I just said it. You're not winning nationals. I'm not sure I would choose to live in Montana, but I've been to Montana and it's beautiful there. I wouldn't be mad if I had to live there. Let's see. I think I would probably say, do I have to pick one from each division or just one anywhere?
I think you could just pick one anywhere.
Maybe one of the Portland teams would be pretty fun. It's a pretty good legacy, cool scene, great city. I haven't really spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest, so I'd be pretty into that. Maybe Bravo would be fun. I think it would be fun to coach a team that has a chance to win, but isn't like the consensus favorite. What do you think, Keith?
Well, Charlie, I'm going to tell you flat out, you gave the wrong answer. The right answer is Phoenix, so that you can coach Lindsey Sue, obviously. Why would you not want to work with Lindsey Sue?
I thought you were going to name like a Hawaiian team.
Honestly, I think that there's some real appeal to the Triangle area teams, though. I think to me the probably like simplest answer is probably one of the teams from the Bay. Revolver or Fury. To me, the prestige of the program, the like history, that has a lot of meaning. It would be really cool to be a part of like a thing bigger than yourself and try and help, be a part of a chapter of a legacy program. Obviously the Bay has great weather. Usually you probably get to play at a tournament nearby. You have a ton of talent to draw from. And frankly, those programs are just drawing talent from not only their general area where they're rich with great college programs, but also people moving to those communities and even international players. So I think that to me, Revolver or Fury, probably Fury would be my first answer. But there's some other pretty appealing, like I could see AMP as a legacy team. I know they're not in the nationals field, but as a legacy team, I think that could be a really fun, interesting team to work with that draws from a unique pool of talent. I could probably say the same for Dragon Thrust. So those are teams I think that stand out to me.
Well, you can put your answers in the chat, folks. Appreciate you being with us here live on YouTube every Tuesday at noon Eastern time. That is going to do it for today's show. Join us next week as we continue our march towards Club Nationals. We'll start talking some Club Nat stuff next week, and then we'll have our major preview show the following week. I think we might reschedule slightly, so keep an eye on the social media for the timing of that episode. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look. Knicks are coming, Keith.